Hello, everybody, and welcome to One Day Today. This is episode 91. Welcome. I'm excited to be back and excited to be with you. Thank you for joining us or watching this episode in the future. So, every time we have an episode, Matthew and I, we'll always talk about this, but it's funny because we never know what to expect, and it speaks to the vastness and the beauty of humanity and just the colors and the full spectrum of not only the gifts we all are and have to share, but just that there's just no way to experience everything. And it's just, but there's, what the space we hold. I was speaking, I was talking about the virtual stage with somebody, a few people earlier today, and they're asking what it was and about it. And, what's the beauty of it is, that, we focus on the beautiful souls in humanity who, amidst a pandemic, amidst this new experience of the world that is ever changing and ever moving. It's like that we focus on the beauty. We focus on the people who are committed to something greater than themselves. And and in my experience, when I see just the amazing thing people are up to, it's like I cannot help but have not only faith in humanity, but just awe and excitement for the future of just what's possible when we actually hold the space for our humanity, our possibility, and again, the divine expression of the universe in us all. We all have such unique things to share, and when we focus on that, on what contributions we have to share, what unique genius we have to hold and to create together, what is possible. And it's not like a abstract, like anything is possible. It's like at any moment, in every moment, every now, every right now, and the next right now, and it's like every time, every moment of time, there's an opportunity for us to choose to be who we are and to live in the possibility of creating something that humans experience humans and what we all have to be contributing towards in for the greatness of us all, and to see that and to hold that space. So so this is a garden, and we choose to water the beautiful humans and to bring light and spotlight and hold up people who are up to amazing things, people who have gifts to share, and we include you. There's no person who's not welcome to share their gifts on this stage. But first, let me welcome my dear friend and co-host Matthew. Matthew, how are you today, brother?
You know, doing pretty good, actually. Doing pretty good. Um, there's been a few things that have come up that may come up in the show. It may not. We'll see. I'll hold those to the side for now. But just speaking on what you were talking about, it's fun. I know you say this almost every single time. Like it's like you've got your brand down, and I really appreciate that. But um, again, every single time you say it, I get something different out of it. And what came this time was the rate in which change is possible. Right? If we look at this like a competing technology, if you go back 200 years, 100 years, whatever, any new competing technology that is significantly better by at least 10% than the previous technology um, has a tendency to usurp the previous technology in about 10 years. And some of the most extreme examples would be cars. Like there's this famous picture of New York in 1903, and there is one car in the entire picture. And then there's another picture of the exact same spot about 10 years later, and there's one horse in the entire picture.
Hmm.
And we see that with cars, with cell phones, with computers, with over and over and over again. Now we're starting to see it with money. We're starting to see it with the crypto space, where um, you know Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies literally outcompete government currency, fiat currency. And we're starting to see that mass adoption really ramp up just this year, actually. And who knows what's going to happen in the future, but I would not be surprised in the next 10 years we have a new global reserve currency simply because it's out competing the US dollar and the Chinese yuan and everything else. And it kind of feels like what we're introducing here and what is being introduced in other spiritual centers around the world is very similar to that theme. Like it's almost like it's a competing, not technology, but competing way of being or a different way of being.
It's a
And
paradigm. That's
it
the
is,
word that
yeah,
comes to me.
yeah, it's exactly, it's a different paradigm. And this paradigm that we're introducing, like once someone gets it, it's like it's not just like a light bulb goes off. It's like their entire being lights up. And they then kind of go and they be that with their friends and their family. And like once their friends and family get it, you just see that light spread and spread and spread and spread. And it's like looking at it, it really does feel like an adoption curve where you don't see much change at the beginning. But once that upward tick happens, let's go this way actually because the camera's reversed. But yeah, once that upward tick happens, like that exponential growth is just insane. And you just see massive change in such a very, very short time. And it feels like we're right about here now. And as this grows, we're going to be up here in the next 3 to 5 years, probably. Like it's just, I feel a tremendous potential for a massive paradigm shift in this world over the next 3 to 5 years. And
I think
it feels like this
that's
is
the
kind of
writing
the
on the
moment.
wall.
Yeah.
I see that,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, no, and I think like to your point about how history does that, from cars to cell phone, and it's like, but it's whatever's in front of us by the need, by the tragedy, so to speak, of that humanity's facing. It's always an emergency that we're facing that we have a mirror. It's like, oh, what do we do? We like but that's the opportunity of COVID, of this new experience, is
Climate
like
change.
climate change. It's like everything, we
Yeah.
keep on having these emergencies pile up, and like
Yeah.
we're like looking in the mirrors like, oh, well, am I responsible for this, or what is my responsibility, or what could I do to be a part of the solution to this, or what's important to me. And I think that's what's opening up. And I see that and I sense that, and it feels like, that's why we started this, is it wasn't something like I woke up and like I want to start a new holiday. It was like it seemed like the easiest thing to do is to speak what the beauty that every person has, that a lot of us have pretended isn't, that we can't see, and we're lying to ourselves that there's not something unique that each of us has, and that there's not a piece of ourselves in our neighbor, and there's not a piece of our neighbor in us. And I'm really excited to have both of our guests today. Let me introduce, for our first guest, we have with us Jenny Carrington. Welcome, Jenny.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. So excited.
No, we're excited to have you.
Abram, Matthew, it's nice to meet you. For everyone watching, my name is Jenny Carrington. I also go by Jenny Meatballs. That is actually my comedic name and my hiker name. I am best known for walking across America between 2019 and 2020, 1 year. And I actually finished on the day that COVID hit, March 11th. I started March 11th, 2019, finished March 11th, 2020 in Venice Beach. And so today I'm going to share a little bit about my walk, which I call the Earth Walk, and why I did that walk and how I think it's going to help us gear up for this paradigm shift that we're talking about, and some of the concrete ideas and solutions that I was walking to raise awareness about. So I guess I'll take it away then. I'm going to share a little bit of a little video about the walk just to give you guys an idea. This is one of my pride and joy pieces of art that came out of my year-long trek from Delaware to Venice Beach. So I'll start with that, and then I'll share a little bit more about myself. So here we go. Let's go ahead and play. Hello, everybody. It's Jenny Meatballs here, and I am on day 1 of our We Are Mother Earth cross-country hike. I was thinking about We Are Mother Earth and how it's so much more than just a brand. We Are Mother Earth is a call to beauty. Like they say, a call to action. It's a call to recognize what calms our heart, soothes our soul, and leaves us feeling re-energized and inspired. I started crying and the heavens started crying. Walking in the snow. So that actually brought some tears to my eyes watching that because it feels like so long ago. Oh, let me exit this sound here so you guys can hear me again. Yeah, if there's any way to get the couple of you guys back on so I can see you again, that would be cool.
We can do that.
Great. Thank you so much. So, my company, We Are Mother Earth, Wame, which is like a Native American chant, Wame, like a drum beat, Wame, Wame, is basically taking a look at radical collaboration for a healthier future for our next 7 generations. So I walked across America to raise awareness about the necessity of collaboration. And this was all before COVID hit, right? So a lot of people didn't even know what I was talking about when I said radical collaboration for a healthier future. I have had foresight about maybe not a pandemic, but about sort of the collapse of capitalism for about 5 years. And for a long time, people really weren't understanding, what I was talking about. And everyone thought I was a little crazy. And I even ended up in the mental hospital in 2017 for talking about these things. And I decided that I wasn't going to give up and I was going to take it one step at a time and raise awareness about my company and our mission by talking to people along the way, learning about what great nonprofits are out there doing things for climate change, holistic health opportunities, nature-based education. These are the types of things that We Are Mother Earth is really looking at. And what we're doing is we're building a gigantic global corporation that is setting up these communities of the future that we're calling Togetherland, Earth Smart campus towns of the future. So I stopped in intentional communities all along the walk, and ranches and farms, and to learn about what type of communities we want to build and design to live in our next 7 generations. So with an eye toward not just us, but the world we're leaving our children. So I want to just pause for a minute and give you guys a chance to ask me any questions before I keep going.
Well, first of all, wow, that's amazing. Your whole story, your whole walk, your vision, I mean, okay, well, I have a lot of questions, and I just first want to acknowledge you and your courage and your standing in seeing the beauty in the world, even when you felt crazy or others thought you were crazy. And that's been a lot of my journey as well. How afraid I've been to share the visions and share the thoughts share what's in my heart, deep down, even for myself, where I would not even be honest with myself about what was important to me because I was so afraid of what people thought of me. And I mean, that's kind of based on what the first question would be is, like, how do you do that? I feel like a lot of us would give that grounds to give up. And I feel, and I see this in humanity. It's so funny, the word insanity and how subjective that is. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, they say, I mean, this is the definition of insanity we all hear is, trying the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And I think it's more complex than that. I think that is definitely insanity. But it's interesting to me that somebody thinks someone who has such a beautiful, like, uniting message thinks is insane. And I see the same thing in Jesus. I see the same thing in Gandhi. I see the same thing in King. This is a history that, I mean, it doesn't have to repeat itself, but I see the pattern of that, how afraid we are of authenticity. And what do you say to that? And how did you discover that? How did you get so strong? That's my question.
Well, it's a good question. And still to this day, I battle a lot with, I'm now formally diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder and bipolar disorder. So I experience a lot of mania, and I have a lot of, like visions, and I feel people's energies, and I often am steps ahead of people to where they, don't understand what I'm talking about. So it's been a challenge I would say it comes back to sort of trying to exit the mind and return to the heart. So it's a challenge because I live a lot in my mind, and my authentic being is to live in my mind. But always returning back to my heart and getting grounded. I do a lot of meditation. I do a lot of yoga, a lot of dance, a lot of art, and really remembering my inner child, I think, and the heart center of my inner child is what guides me, because I want to create a world where my 10-year-old self wanted to live, right? So that's truly what drives me when people ask, like, what's your big why? I revert back to memories of going to the Bronx Zoo or the Liberty Science Center with touch exhibits. That was one of my favorite things as a child, like to go to museums where they had interactive, immersive exhibits. And I just loved learning through kinesthetic learning. And so as an adult, I look back at what I wanted when I was a child. And when I was a child, I was the type of girl who said to myself, had foresight back then. I would say, when you're 25, remember this moment. And I would be in an exhibit and be like, lock it in your memory, Jennifer. Lock the moment in your memory right now so that you can remember it when you're 25. And then I did. Then 20 years passed, and I kept that promise to myself to remember what my inner child wanted for the world. And I think there's such an innocence. And so we talk about authenticity a lot in community, right? And in the intentional communities I go to, we talk about authenticity. I don't think we talk enough about innocence. And what happens is, as we grow into adults, we experience trauma. And I've experienced a lot of trauma that I'm still processing. I mean, multiple rape traumas. Even on the walk, I was kidnapped multiple times. And, you know, trauma puts up walls against our essence. So when we're talking about authenticity, it's impossible to talk about authenticity without talking about stripping away the layers of protection that we've built around our hearts. So if we want to build a heart-centered future where people are showing up to connect with each other in authenticity, we first have to ask ourselves, what does it take to strip away all the traumas and burdens so that we can connect from a place of innocence and authenticity. And I personally believe, and this is a little radical, I'm a radical, but I follow Osho's teachings, and I personally believe that sexual repression is the root of all evil. And so I'm very interested in the idea of remembering who we are as naked humans, and like how we show up innocently as naked beings that want to play in the river with Mother Earth and Mother Nature. So my company name, We Are Mother Earth, I didn't come up with that. It was actually gifted to me by a dear friend who's another powerful manifester. And his download was that we need to remember, we've forgotten that we all come from a woman, and we all come from Mother Earth's energy, and that a woman is naked during birth. And so we need to honor the naked woman body before we can actually ever return to a place of purity and innocence, because so much of capitalism, money, and the way the current economic structure works that oppresses people and puts people in a place of negotiation and deal making and oppression and privilege is about power and sex. So for me, the whole walk was tied into stripping every one of my sexual traumas and being able to show up in the world like naked and unafraid, if that makes sense, like vulnerable, intimate, heart naked, heart naked. So I am a big advocate for healthy peer intimacy and sensual discovery as a way to clear your trauma, getting into nature, doing ceremony by the river, by the water sources, in sweat lodges and things like that. And really building these communities, which we're now calling, like I said, Togetherland, where people can come together and connect without fear. Does that answer the question?
And then some.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yes to everything you just said. Absolutely yes. And I'm gonna step back and look in the even bigger picture for a second. Osho, I love him, and I love like the little just like nuggets he throws out in the world, like sexual repression is the root of all evil. Like that's probably one of my personal favorites. I would take that even bigger. Repression is the root of all evil, if you choose to define evil, which is another thing that we can play with. It's something. It feels like that's a privilege we have in this existence on this world, is the ability to play with light, dark, good, bad, right, wrong.
Absolutely.
And so there's two things that feel really important in what you just said. One is the intentional communities and the way we want to live in the future. And the big thing that comes up in that for me is not that it needs to happen, because like to me this world is what it is, and it's a school, it's a place of learning, it's a place to grow, and the constant question is, can I be loving in the face of? Can I still be loving when this happens? Can I still be loving when that happens? And so in a way it feels like the ability to have everything happen is a bit of a necessity to me.
Yeah. So I'm going to take it there because you brought it there. And I know we're probably close to our time, I think, but let me know, you can cut me off. But so before I had before I started any companies, I was at Fordham University, and I had an interdisciplinary degree in psychology, social work, and public policy called Human Development and Social Intervention. And what I studied was love. I was really interested in the spirit of the 60s and the sort of like, authenticity, free love, right? And I wanted to understand, like, everyone talks about love, but how do we actually embody love? Like, we have to define it. We throw around love in so many different so I started studying the different ways that different theologists and scientists actually define love. And I took that first, and then I started breaking that down and understanding what it looks like in interpersonal relationships, and then in community relationships, and then in institutions. So my business model looks at the way that like the 5 different types of love, like agape, mania, ludos, these types, different ways that we relate in loving kindness to each other. So is it companionship? Is it sexual attraction? Is it commitment? These are all different like definitions of love that we don't talk about. We're just like, we need to live in a loving world. Cool. Okay. What does that mean? Like, how do we show up and love each other? What does that look like? And what does it mean? If we're not teaching about love, how are we going to show up in loving kindness? So I started really looking at that. And then I took it to a corporate level, and I asked myself, how can we get different companies to show up and interact in a loving, collaborative way? So that was my whole dissertation and what led me to this business model. And I think you're just totally right in the sense that really, truly what it comes down to is that God is everywhere, God is everything. And if God is love, then love is everywhere and love is everything. So how do we accept? Radical acceptance is really the root of all love, I think.
Yeah, and that right there. So like, it's funny. Years ago, a buddy of mine, prompted me with this question: if you could pick one word that defined love, what would it be? And I blanked. Like, I just completely blanked. There was nothing. And after a while, he said, for me, it's simply acceptance. Like, to accept everything exactly the way it is. And so I was playing with that for a while, and this came up with another buddy of mine in Peru, and we were talking about it, and I realized, like, Bruce said accept, and I feel like I just need to add one more word to that, and then that's it. It's done, and that's radical acceptance.
Yeah.
No, beautifully said. And it's what's interesting. I mean, in this we've had. I remember a virtual stage where it was maybe a few weeks ago that we went actually very in depth about that as well, and it makes me want to revisit it. But what's fascinating about love and how we talk about it and how we act about it are a lot of. It's like sometimes we'll say, it's like we say I love you, or we'll hear I love you, and then our actions are different, and we love people and we still hurt the people we love. We still like, and it's fascinating, but because ultimately we all just crave and desire and intuitively want to love and be loved.
Mm-hmm.
And like every human has that, but it's like the degrees of love, like where it's interesting. What makes it interesting is like where loving somebody is telling them the truth that they are afraid to hear. And it's like where the best way to love somebody sometimes is to release them, or sometimes. And so there's the dynamic of, where loving somebody in action and in essence, and accepting that, like accepting them fully means letting them go. Or sometimes it means, telling them the truth when it hurts. And it just fascinates me because it's like love is absolutely everywhere, and it's like in the moment we have the choice to see it or not in ourselves, and it's that radical acceptance where we, like what you're saying, Matthew, like in the face of resentment, can we love? In the face of jealousy, can we love? In the face of fear, it's like that, and that's almost what life's test is like, how many situations can we get thrown at us where it seems seemingly harder to love and like still be that and do that.
So I'm just gonna, I know we're probably close to done, but I just want to turn around one quick thing if I can. So here's what I found, and this is why I love yoga and meditation, is because the way we learn to do that for others is first by doing it for ourselves. So every system outside of us is the same as the system inside of us. So and this is why it circles back around to radical acceptance of the naked truth and the naked being. Like it starts with we cover ourselves with physical clothing because we're ashamed of our bodies and of who we are. So how do we learn to love every single part of us? And it really, for me, comes down to not just the sexual stuff, but the emotional. So if I'm feeling jealous, how do I allow myself to feel that and love that experience of feeling jealous? And I'm like, oh, this is a part of the human experience, and I can love this and I can feel this and I can also change it. So flipping the mirror back to ourselves and being with our emotions and sitting with the reality of everything that we are and our creative power and nature, doing the work first. And, it's kind of cliche or taboo, but really turning that self-love inward helps you to show up in love with other people.
And I can actually make this a practical example right now. So this is actually kind of what was coming up at the beginning of the show when you and I were talking, Abram, that it just didn't feel appropriate to go into yet. And I kind of had a feeling there was a chance to go into it, and here it is. So something I've noticed over the past couple of weeks in my life is the increasing frustration at feeling stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I have noticed this pattern in the external in multiple places. Not only here with the foundation with One Day, but also the community I'm working with up in Canada, with my current partner, and the patterns that are similar that she has in all my previous partners. The relationship with my parents, my relationship with money, like all of these things are showing me the same pattern of being stuck in a repeat, basically. Like it's the same things coming up and over and over and over and over again. And so I haven't actually gotten any clarity on this yet, but the question that comes up for me is, okay, if I'm seeing all this in the external, then where am I repeating? Where am I stuck internally? What belief am I holding? What pattern am I repeating that is keeping everything else around me stuck? And it feels like it has actually a lot to do, now that I'm even sharing this, it has a lot to do with the ability to share what's going on with me in any given moment, and not waiting for the perfect moment. So like, that's something that I'm just going to go ahead and set the intention to continue to practice sharing in the moment instead of waiting for the perfect moment.
Two practical things.
Yeah.
You got to journal, because what you're getting at is the repression of your story to someone else.
Yes.
But again, it starts with you. So journaling has been the number one vehicle for me to my self-love practice, journaling and meditation.
I very much resist journaling. So I'm yeah.
Well, there's something to try though. Maybe that's the thing. Well, there's one thing I'll say to that, because I can relate, and I feel like we could make a whole a marathon episode about that very topic you brought up. And thank you for sharing all of that. And what I'll say is there is no such thing as the perfect moment, and it's always the perfect moment.
And also, going back to radical acceptance, accepting the stuck. Like COVID is forcing us to accept the stuck. We're like, oh, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
How do I deal with myself when I'm stuck? How do I love myself when I'm stuck? What do I do?
Right.
I'm like,
true.
I walk. That's what I do. I walk.
I love it. That's a pretty amazing endeavor to make that kind of commitment and just keep walking. But I think that's a beautiful literal and figurative, practice of, what that opened up for you and your experience. And thank you again, Jenny, so much.
Thank you so much.
It's really just an honor to have you. And we're going to check back on Jenny in a moment here. But thank you again, Jenny. And the thing I'll say, I want to invite you to share on this virtual stage, what you've experienced in your life, what you've overcome, what you've faced, and what you've discovered on the other side of that is a gift. It's a gift for you to share it, and it's a gift for us to receive it. And it's ever given, you don't know who you impact when you share what you've been through, just like what Matthew just did. What he shared, it caused a ripple in the whole impact of the entire universe. It made me think of something that opened up something that was blocking me, which I'm going to talk to someone later about, and then it's going to impact them. It's like we all have so much impact. And if we all actually recognize and own that and discover that. It's such a beautiful thing. And this is my invitation to you, is to share yourself, share the gift that you are. You'll never know the impact that you make, and you'll see some of it, but there's no way to see that and fathom what you sharing your authentic, true, self has and does to the world. And this is an invitation. This is an open invitation to share from your heart with us on our virtual stage. And this is our mission, is bringing you and me and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. And I'm going to welcome now our second guest, Tom Graham. Welcome, Tom.
Well, hello.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here. And I just, that share from before was just amazing. It moved me. I was like, I got a paper towel because it was like, wow. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. It's a real pleasure to have you. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. We met through Wendy Huffman, and she said a lot of great things I've heard about you, and I'm excited to hear your story. But if you're ready, Tom, the stage is yours. Please share.
Thank you. I'm giving a pause because I'm looking, and where I'm at is really being in the moment. And I'm starting out where I ended up. I ended up being mindful and creating this space of mindfulness and really meditation. And so everything that was shared earlier was just, yep, spot on. And yeah, I would prefer this to be a bit of a conversation than me going, well, way back when I was 11, I cried my pillow and I created a story about how I just had to stuff all of my emotions. And that's true. But I caught myself when I was listening to my son, who was older, and shared that, well, he was like, what do you do with the work troubles? Oh, I just stuff them. I went, oh my God, that's my story from when I was 11. So it passed through the generation into his world. And I was like, this is going to stop. And so I shared with him my story about how I said my voice couldn't come out because it wasn't safe, because of the whole family dynamic of my dad was a doctor, and the stories that, why is doctor's kid upset? Might affect the family business, might affect money coming in, the whole thing. And so I got this crazy story that I couldn't speak my truth. And that's what I've discovered, is being able to speak my truth. But going along, Abram, you hit on it. It's like moment by moment, we have a choice. And moment by moment, we have a choice to be in the moment, choosing to be how we are. And, Matthew, it was like, I can choose to carry this baggage, or I can choose not to. What happens is we drag it along. We have emotional baggage and we accumulate it like debt. And pretty soon we get this accumulation of debt, and then we declare bankruptcy and we go on a bender and we drink it away and we forget whatever was there. We have our food addictions. We have our sex addictions. We have whatever other addictions there is. Maybe it's cars, maybe it's travel, escapism. And it's like, can we be present moment by moment and be complete moment by moment? And that is the gift of being present.
Yeah, and that goes back to what Janie was saying about, Osho originally, but the root of all evil is repression.
Exactly.
Stuffing it down as a kid, it's funny. Like, that's one of those things I never actually consciously learned that from my parents. But I did.
Mm-hmm.
I learned it, but not consciously.
Yep. And then flipping it just a bit, how much did you learn from TV shows? You're okay going on any subject here, right?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you look at Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker was supposed to be this dude that was like however you describe it. Do you know what I'm talking about by Archie Bunker?
Like
Abram,
that
you might be a
really
little young.
I
prim,
know the
proper, clean cut, just
No,
like
no, not so much. It was more of a kind of a white middle class male, had his ways, he was set in his ways, and that's how he did life. And then his daughter, Sally Struthers, was married to the director. His nickname was Meatballs. Meatball, dead from the neck up, is what the phrase was. But anyway, so the bottom line is I learned indirectly, what is that supposed to tell me about society? You know, and it's like I learned through TV what shows up, and I realized, oh my gosh, I have these patterns of learning. I didn't know where they came from. Just exactly what you said, Matthew. It's like, where's that from?
Right.
And unless we consciously awaken to it and choose it newly, it's at work.
Yeah.
and that is the work. Like it's basically paying attention to the stories that are happening in the mind,
Mm-hmm.
and then tracking them down to the source and really confronting the question of, is this true or not? Is this a true story?
And also recognizing it as a story in
As
the
a
mind
story.
itself.
Yeah.
Like before you even can like see that, it's like, wait, this isn't me. This is actually just a thought in my head.
None of it's true.
None of it's true. Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones for me was, this was a couple of summers ago. I was back on Hawaii visiting for a little while, doing a job, and it got to the point where like I didn't want to wake up in the morning. Like I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. And at that point in my journey, I had already done a lot of meditation. I had already done a lot of awareness work, and so I was more curious than trapped in the emotion. Like so, whereas before, that feeling would have just literally crashed me for days or weeks or even months, where I would just be in this absolute funk, and all I would want to do is just watch TV all day and then go back to bed and nothing else. But at this point, like I had already like done a lot of meditation and awareness work, and so I was more curious than anything. And so I was like, all right, let's watch what happens if I just stay in bed one day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just woke up, and the feeling was there. I didn't want to wake up. I wanted to go right back to sleep. I didn't want to be there. And I started tuning in to the conversation my mind was having. And it was this conversation of, why should I get out of bed? Nothing ever changes. It's all the same. What's the fucking point?
Yep.
I was like, huh. All right. Well, that's okay. So there's the story right there. Like, what's the point? There's nothing ever changes. Is that a true statement? I don't know. Huh. I don't know. Huh. Let's find out. And so I get up, and like there's this like now there's a curiosity about my day, and all of a sudden there's energy, and it's not the mopiness anymore. It's like, oh, okay, let's go see what happens when I show up.
Yep.
And so I did, and I went out, and I was staying tuned in, staying aware of what was going on around me. And so this moment came up where I was going to lunch, and I had a plan. I was going to go for street tacos because they're super cheap. They're cash. I had cash. Didn't want to spend a lot of money. I'm like, street tacos, that's the thing. So I'm walking down to get these street tacos, and I see a sign, Yelp's 8th best hamburger in the USA.
Yeah.
Like, huh. Okay, that's interesting. And then there's the curiosity again. The curiosity peaked again. I was like, follow the curiosity. And so I turned and I followed the sign. I walk into the store, and there's this, woman there, and clearly she's not in a good mood. And so I walk up, and I'm just like, hey, how's it going today? And she's like, honestly, kind of shit.
Yep.
No, really shit. Like it's just really shit today. And I was just blown away that she was in this position where she was being paid to be happy, like paid to be a cashier. And despite that, she's still being authentic. And so we ended up having this really amazing conversation. And like she actually ended up becoming one of my best friends and worked with her for quite a while. And really, like her and I worked through a lot of stuff together. But none of that would happen if I hadn't started tuning in, paying attention to that story in my
Right.
head.
Mhm.
So what I hear in that, Matthew, is what I call my intuition when I listen to where I'm supposed to be. There's places I show up where I don't know exactly why I'm supposed to be there, and I'm there, and I make a difference for that individual in who I'm being. And it's like I'm in the right place at the right time to make a difference. And it's that ripple effect, Abram, where it's like something shifted. And so it's all of us collectively listening to that intuition and trusting that intuition that we're in the right space, we're doing the right thing, we're being the right person, and we're really sharing love. And it's like that person that cashier, she was gotten. I guarantee you listened to her to the point where she felt heard and her day shifted.
Exactly. And it did.
Yeah.
And
And there's a cascade, a whole cascade you can't count.
Right. Well, and that's kind of what you're speaking to is kind of the power of community. And it's interesting because I kind of, I think it's what church probably is supposed to be. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say what church is or what it isn't, but I just imagine the most effective community in the world is when we can't, because we all have blind spots. We all have things like if we all could act on what we knew was best for us, even when we know it is, like we would do it. And it's always something we can't see that, makes us do things that we wish we didn't. And to be like, and it's that mirror that others in listening to us it's like when we can hold that space to it's like, what I see as intimacy is, being fully known and being fully known and fully knowing. And it's just like letting someone be themselves, like fully. And like, again, Jenny, radical acceptance. It's that same thing. It's that same place. It's like when we hold that space, it's like, hey, I'm someone who loves you and you can be you and share anything. And I'm going to listen and I'm going to hear you and I'm going to see you for who you are and who you're not. And I'm not going to hold it against you. And I'm going to just love you. It's like being that space is what allows us, even the most bright minds, beautiful hearts, and, radiant souls have blind spots, and it's like when we are that space for another, we can that's what they say in scripture, iron sharpens iron. That is the action of, it's like, hey, I can't scratch my back. I can't reach it, and it's like, well, that's what community is. And and I think that's a beautiful, like what you're both speaking towards is we are that for each other. And if we're all just islands, is that it's not a paradigm shift if it's not shared and if it's not together and if it's not all of us. It's like it's all of us or it's none of us. It's like not everyone will understand or get it, but it's like there's no such thing as the individual, the identity, the ego is all construction. And when we are, and I guess I'm speaking very generally, but I'm saying we all have, when we all are holding that space with each other, like why would we not scratch each other's back? And yes, good call, Matthew. Let's bring Jenny back into. I feel like this is, again, not coincidentally coming full circle.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Well, I just want to say, Tom, I think you made some very astute points.
Yeah, and I just was listening to your share, and I got my paper towel right here. I was like doing this. I'm out to heal the earth, and you are too. And so it's just like, wow, okay, giddy up, let's go. What has to happen? And so for me, I'm coming at it from the people side. Like, be in the moment, be intentional, use those points where people frustrate you, and be curious about what is it, the frustration, what's at the root of that. Why are you frustrated that guy cut you off and got the parking spot? Did it really make a difference in your day? Or is it just frustrating? You know,
I love these inquiries. I love them. And you're so, I feel like I really learned something. And as someone whose ego, like, for as spiritually driven as I am, I also have a huge ego. Anyone that knows, like, it's like, you know, two sides of the same coin, right? So I have a gigantic heart and a gigantic ego. And so, you know, I love really, really diving into deep learning about philosophy. And so I just feel almost really like a light bulb went off, because, you know, I think radical acceptance has been the definition I've really been using for love. But actually, I really think curiosity is a really strong container. It's this really strong container for the conversation, because, you know, getting curious. I mean, when you think of intimacy, you're like playing with someone else. So when you turn it back around to yourself, though, this is why so many people turn to meditation, is because it's all about getting curious about yourself. So Matthew, you shared your moment about, like, is that story real? That's the curiosity. So here's what I think, where this really ties back into a concrete vision for our future, though. In the current system, we don't have space or time to get curious, because everything is about productivity. So the reason I love intentional communities, and the reason why I have this vision for these sort of sustainable playgrounds and theme parks as our communities of the future, is because if we want to transform the way that we're interacting with ourselves and others, we have to transform the system, which enables us the space to get curious and intimate.
So, Jenny, I challenge your premise respectfully.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And yeah, it's like, what is the individual choice? Don't individuals have choice moment by moment?
Well, of course, right? So what I would say is, like anything, there's a spectrum of like meritocratic enhancement, right? So if you're really good at this, if you're really good at the game of loving yourself, which I like to think I am,
Yeah.
and this is why I have had the resilience to walk across America, because I was in a situation where I was literally kidnapped by a meth addict who shoved a gun in my chest. And I was like, kind of like, it sounds weird, but I was kind of laughing a little bit, because I knew that I was able to look him in the eyes, and I sat him down and we did yoga and I did breath work with him. And at the end of the time where he kidnapped me, got into a car accident with me, shoved a gun in my chest, and like, he actually was not trying to hurt me. He was on meth. It was a whole big thing. He gave me a diamond ring and like told me, you know, he was like, thank you so much for that experience. So what I learned was that, yes, Tom, you're right. You can come back. You can come back to total peace, total 100% inner peace. And it is ultimately our responsibility, regardless of our external circumstances, to get curious about that inner peace and how to get there. And also, if we create systems that make that the norm, we create a ripple effect where all of a sudden we're not having to work so hard to get to that nirvana, right? We're not having to work so hard to get to the shavasana that we all want. We're just kind of like, we're just doing it naturally and easily.
Yeah. I'm a yoga instructor, so I get that. Like, yeah.
I love it. This is a beautiful inquiry and dialogue. And just speaking, well, one thing when you started off, you said you had a big ego, Jenny. It reminded me of a quote. I remember the exact quote, but it's like, the brightest lights also have the darkest shadows. And I think it's apropos to, I get it. It's, you know, it's about, but also those who have, you know, the greatest darkness also shine the brightest lights. And it's like, and it's in the process and with those systems that you're talking about that makes that possible, you know, that overcoming, it's like those internal experiences that allow us to channel that darkness that's seemingly prevalent and always there. And it's like, you know, it's like an artist, for example, they can be in despair of their circumstances and use and channel channel it. And I mean, there's so many artists over the centuries who've had that. I mean, even Beethoven, but like, I mean, you could say like Kurt Cobain or all these different, there's way more in between that, but it's like art. You can see both extremes where it's channeling those, lack of a better word, demons. It's channeling those that voice that it's that ego. It's channeling that ego that allows us to every time we have an instance where ego is strong, is an opportunity to be stronger. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's always like, you see that. Go ahead, Matthew. I see you lighting up here.
Yeah, okay, like 4 different things, but I'm probably only gonna have time to bring like 2 of them up. So one, to your comment, Abram, about the artist channeling, Hosier actually has a wonderful line that really points to this. Never try to kill your demons, but always keep them on a leash.
Mm.
And like that, I love, because like there's so much, and this kind of goes back to what you and Jenny, you and Tom were talking about ego. And like, I feel like in like the really like, to me, they're very egotistical spiritual communities. The ego tends to be vilified quite a bit. And I don't see it that way. Like I'm very much more with you, and where they're complimenting. Like I wouldn't be able to be here in this body without an ego, as far as I can tell. Mm-hmm. Like this ego is kind of my tool to navigate this reality in a way. And it's also something that has been very useful in that it kind of leads me into the lessons that I came here to learn. It's the ego that has kind of brought me into these patterns that I feel stuck in. And it's those patterns and learning to be unstuck and learning to be okay and accept the stuckness that seems to be one of my big lessons in this life. And so that is kind of its own container. But then the other thing that I really want to bring up is the systems and the way we can work with creating communities where we actually want to be in the future. And I love that your company name is a Native American chant. I'm actually really curious, like what that actually translates to. But you mentioned like the childhood curiosity, like what's the world would my 10-year-old want to live in? And that's something that I see a lot in indigenous cultures, where the method of learning is that kinetic. It is it's be quiet and watch. Like I'm not going to teach you what the world is. I'm going to ask you to observe and figure it out for yourself. And so it's a big picture here, because like there's so much that like just comes together in all of this.
We'll just pour into you, Matthew. Just love. It's all love.
So
yep.
The biggest hindrance I've seen with every community I've worked with and every community I've been in contact with has been the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Mm-hmm. Survival first, thrive second. And the question, like I'm starting to see patterns in capitalism that actually may lead to the resolution of that, like automation and things of that nature, where we're actually automating energy production, we're automating food production. That makes it much easier for us to have time to contemplate these questions and to like have more time for community and community building and learning and growing. But at the same time, have either of you, actually any of you, because Abram, this question applies to you as well. Like, have you actually experienced or know about a community that is fully self-sustaining that has switched from simply survival to thriving? Like, does that exist yet in your awareness?
Well, okay, so I would say first, I just want to put a word on what you were talking about in the previous thing, which is non-duality. Non-duality. So the acceptance of non-duality. And one of the reasons why I like curiosity as a better definition of love than acceptance, because acceptance is still someone's teaching you about them. They're showing you them. I'm showing you me, and then you have to accept me, as opposed to this non-dual curiosity. Curiosity is non-dual. So if life's a school, you know, that non-duality is the big piece, because that's what creates harmony. And if you think of sacred geometry, everything is non-dual and everything is interconnected. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, yes, in terms of the systems and the automation of food production and energy. So one of the things We Are Mother Earth is into is curating, like, you know, future technologies and things like that for food production and energy sustainability. But here's where it gets tricky. If you're using automation to do those things, then you're left with humans pondering these questions, and then they're back in the mind. So the first thing I said was that one of the ways thrive, one of the ways we thrive is by being in the heart. So if that's the goal, if we're automating everything, then we're not connected to our food. And then, so we don't have that same, it's like we're all on Zoom, like talking about it, you know? So really, actually, for me, the answer is to get people back to nature, because without the connection to nature and to each other, we can't be thriving, even if food production is automated. So the closest that I've seen, yes, I mean, I've seen pretty close communities in Costa Rica, you know, but thriving truly is subjective in a lot of ways. I mean, it's meta objective, I like to call it. So there's like a meta layer of objectivity over the subjective experience. So you never really can tell if someone's thriving or not unless the thriving is in the process. We thrive when we're curious and we love each other. That's the process of thriving. It's not a thing. It's not a state.
And the definition of love is beyond words. And you get in a trap when you try to pin it down, because it's a being.
Yeah, it's an energy. It's a force. It's an energy. And language can sometimes be a major barrier.
Yeah.
When we're trying to transmit energy to someone and we're using the wrong words.
Yeah, and that resonates with my own experience too. Like it's been those moments when I've been back working the land that I've felt the most connected and the most energetic and alive. So yeah.
Yeah, and if it's not working the land, you know, for a lot of people, like I also, when I was on the walk, I got to stop at a cannabis farm and I got to clip the first harvest of the largest grow operation in Oklahoma. It was really cool. I clipped this, you know, big plant, and I did feel really connected. But then, you know, I thought about our brothers and sisters of color just slaving away in the cotton fields. You know, like any experience is totally dependent on, is totally circumstantial. So for a lot of people, they might not like, connecting with growing your own food is still out there for a lot of people. So I just say food in general, like the literal experience of drinking clean water and eating. If we thriving to me is creating a future where we're centering our lives around connecting over food and drink. Ultimately our entire lives are on, we're trying to get food and drink and connection, food, drink, connection.
Yeah. There's so much depth and dynamics to this conversation, because like about the subjectivity or objectivity. And it's like people, a lot of the time I guess there's like a spiritual hunger, and then there's a physical hunger. And I mean, some might use different words than spiritual. You might use ontological, and you know, but the point is, like, some people with the least, like with food, are grateful and get healthy off or they have the most or give the most. Like, right. So like, it's in my experiences of my traveling is just touring as a musician and meeting people in Europe and in the US for years and years and years, the people that I would just appear out of it seemingly thin air with very little would give away the most. And I think, but it's the same thing in, you know, other parts of the world where there aren't as wealthy, you know, not centuries of capitalist systems that have generated wealth, but they're a lot happier, and they're a lot more, and not, it's fascinating because although we're eating more food here, we're a lot unhealthier. And I mean, but it's like, but where that begins with spirituality and ends with physical, it's like, I don't know where that is. It's like I'll joke with friends, like, say, are you gonna have a slice of pizza? Or like, most of the time I avoid like flour and sugar, as we're supposed to, but the point, like, I'll say, like, it's good for me because it makes me happy. It's like the joke I'll say, it's like, it's good for my immune system. And it's like, but there's a truth in it. Like, there's some people who are with very little access to healthy food and water, who are healthy in every other way because they're grateful for what they have.
Mm-hmm.
There's people in jail, for example, who very, very little and are at peace. And like, where does the physical health begin, and where does the spiritual health end?
It's a great question, Abram, and a really great question. Something I'm still seeking the answer to, and part of it is that, first of all, we're not even really, we're just starting to measure mental health in this society. So I'm a certified peer mental health specialist, and we're just starting to look at mental health, and that's not even getting into the spiritual health. So, there are lots of ways to define, optimal well-being or thriving. And I don't have an answer for that one, but I think it's a great question.
Well, and I think Go ahead, Tom.
I want to throw an invitation out to all of you.
Yeah.
It's a Clubhouse room. I don't know if you've heard of Clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And the Art of Peaceful Living. It's at 8 a.m. Eastern and 7 a.m. Central. And it's diving into these questions every day.
If I had an iPhone.
Now there's a possibility you don't need it.
Really?
Yeah, they're just coming out with the app for the
The Android app?
Yep.
Okay. You got my curiosity piqued. And then in regards to that question, I feel like it can, like, to me, that's one of those things that can come from either side, right? Like, I can start with the spiritual and the emotional work and the mental work, and like that leads to more grounded and centered, healthy body. Or I can start with the physical work, the nutritional, the working out, the exercise, and that leads to more grounded, mental, spiritual body. And like, it seems like they swap. Like, sometimes it feels more appropriate to work on the emotional, spiritual. Sometimes it feels more appropriate to work on the mental and on the physical and the nutritional. But like, it's like there's not really like a clear answer to me, like Jenny was like, it just like,
right. Well, that's it. We don't know.
Can I do my best to answer it since my ego's coming up?
Oh yeah.
And then I get to follow.
Yeah.
Okay. So SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Association, has come up with the 8 dimensions of wellness. So we're actually only talking about 3: mental, physical, spiritual. They've come up with 8. And during my training, what I learned, like, we did a really simple exercise where we put all these 8 dimensions of wellness in a pie chart, and then we would fill in how much very subjective, right? How like well we felt in that area. And so the way you really determined overall wellness and thriving was how full your pie chart was. So everyone's pie chart looks different, but the idea is for you to have some kind of internal working model and measurement system. And it doesn't have to be the 8 dimensions of wellness. There are other models and modalities out there. But if you create an internal working model, and then the more that we each have access to those tangible tools and language to talk about thriving and talk about wellness, the more we can connect with others about it, right? So, same thing I was saying with the definitions of love. Like, right now, it's you meet someone, you have chemistry, and you just, maybe you go on a date, as opposed to like really sitting down and deciding what's the kind of chemistry that I have with this person. Are we supposed to go into business together? Is this supposed to be a long-term friendship? Are we supposed to be friends with benefits? Am I supposed to marry them? Have kids, be a domestic partner? There's all these different ways to show love. There's also all these different ways to measure thriving. So once we develop better language and tools and measurement systems, we can communicate with each other. So I could be like, Abram, I'm feeling like, Like I'm really like lacking right now in my financial wellness, but I'm doing all really well in all the other areas. What do you like? How do you feel? You know, like, are we a good match to be in synergy and alignment right now in our work or in our play? So I think getting comfortable with communicating these types of things and not making it taboo to talk about like how we're doing, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's
Tom,
Tom.
you had something to add?
Yeah. 3 letters, A-N-D.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Matthew, it's not either or.
Yeah.
And you know,
both.
Jenny, you really
That's
created this. You created this eight component thing. I don't know, about 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, I came up with my 7 P's: passion, perseverance, priorities, purpose, perseverance, and passion. And there were 7 of them. And it's like a wheel. And if any one of them's out, it's like a tire. It kind of goes flat. You can still go down the road, but you
right.
start getting 2 of them, it goes ka-funk, ka-funk, ka-funk. You get 3, and it's like, punk. It's like, oh crap, you might as well just, it's over. Go fix it.
That's a great analogy, Tom.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, and
Yeah.
Which and is been a big resolver in all my relationships too. I stopped saying, well, you did this, but you know, I literally have replaced but with and everything. So when someone tells me something and they're like, you know, you did this and it made me really angry, I say, yes, I did do that. And also the reason I did that is because this, right? And it's just like makes it a lot more palatable because we're accepting full responsibility for what is, being in the present, accepting what is, and also opening ourselves up to the non-dual nature. So and is a big one.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's powerful. And it's like I've done the same thing with myself. Just the and, replacing the but with an and. It's just like conflict seems to go away. Like in situations where I would water and bring on conflict, it's like, and it's like, oh well, that wasn't so bad. Like I didn't have to like make it this but this or but that.
For anyone watching, this is a miraculous, life-changing skill set. Please just start replacing but with and all of your conflicts will be dissipated and about 60 to 40% of the time.
Yeah, no, totally. And like, I think in the spectrum we were referring to, you know, I just, you know, how, I mean, having those 8 or 7 or 8 tiers of, you know, fulfillment and, you know, it's just fascinating how we're very creative by nature, but like how we can find ways to be discontent. And well, like just an example, like too much of a healthy thing can be unhealthy, a healthy thing. And it's like there's a disorder called orthorexia, which is basically if you're like so concerned with eating organic, that quality of healthy food to the extent where it's actually detrimental to your health. It's like that exists. That's a real, and it's like, and nothing wrong with people who have that, but it's like that doesn't work towards the goal of what you're supposed to be eating healthy for. And it's like, and then at the same time, it's like you could live your whole life healthy and get hit by a bus. And it's like, and I think the measure of happiness is in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's like, as humans, we want to measure in this long, you know, it's good to have data because then we can make choices in the future, which maybe are survival or thriving, depending on where you are on that paradigm shift. But ultimately, it's right now. You know, we want to. It's like we're like data monkeys. We're like, oh, what is the stats in 1932 of this and of this and of this? And it's like, well, it's good to know and it's useful. That's knowledge. Thank you for sharing. And and how do you feel right now? That's the only measure, really.
Yeah, I am so grateful for finding you all and this conversation that we've had time with, and just, yeah, you all move me, and I look forward to speaking with you and being with you again.
Same, really. I'm so grateful. I don't often get to have these kinds of conversations, so I didn't know that it would be like this. And thank you for the space and the time and the sharing and the listening.
Absolutely.
Pleasure is all ours. Matthew, you're going to say something?
I just something I've noticed that comes out of like creating these distinctions. Like, Tom, you had the 7 Ps, and Jenny, you were talking about the 8 degrees of wellness. Um, as like, with the community I work with, we have our own language around this same stuff. But because a lot of the things that you're talking about, we've already distinguished for ourselves in like different language, it translates. And so it's like what you were both pointing to about, how the common language can like really create a stronger bond, and like it's easier to communicate and feel empathy and to be present with another person, to be truly present with, and like have a deeper understanding and intimacy with that person. So taking the time to actually create these distinctions for ourselves feels incredibly helpful to me. And I love that you're each putting even more of them out there in the world for people to discover and to, just to bring it to their awareness. So thank you both.
Yes. Thank you both for who you are, who you're being. You're sharing your wisdom, your insight, your inquiries, and your distinctions. It's this is why we do it. It's like, I love hearing that you don't find conversations like that, because like that's all we have. This is the only conversation we have, and I feel like we've never like planned on like today we're gonna have a deep conversation about this. It's always goes there, and it always, these are the questions, and I think this points to for me it's the Socratic I don't know, and back to the end. It is in the question. It is in the mystery. It is in the not knowing that life exists. We want to think that this thing up here is what defines what is and what isn't, and that our knowledge of certain, our knowledge of any given subject is what it defines the quality of that experience of that moment, of the present moment. And I just think that's ultimately, it's like it's in the mystery. If there was a definite answer for all these questions, how boring would this life be? It's like, well, there's that, and it's like just Google knows, and we're done. Have a good day. It's like there's so much, and it's like that's what every spirituality points to. Scientists, it's like they're coming from different angles. Like science are taking things we don't know and zooming in more and more. Well, what's this made of? And they zoom in more. What's that made of? And what's that made of? And they keep zooming in. It's like, okay, what's that star? And like, let's zoom out more. And how far away is that star? And what's farther than that? What's farther than that? And it's like, it's all the same questions. And the point is, it's a question. There's always going to be more questions than there are answers. And I feel that's what we're circling back to, is the answer is in the not knowing. It's in the question. It's in the experiencing. And that's what I'm reminded of. And thank you both. It's just been such an honor, a privilege. I'm just so grateful. Want to have both of you come back again and share some more, hear more stories and more insights and what you got cooking. And it's just been a great conversation. And thank you. It really just re-energized me today.
Thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure. For anyone that's watching live or watches this recorded, you can find me on the internet anywhere very easily by searching Jenny Meatballs, Jenny, Meatballs like the food, or We Are Mother Earth. Those two, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Jenny Meatballs, We Are Mother Earth. I look forward to connecting to you guys. Thank you. And you can find me on frameofmind.tours on Instagram. And otherwise on Facebook, it's Tom C. Graham. And I look forward to talking to everybody. Yeah, I hope I get to reconnect with you guys again. This was great. That was so great. I just appreciate it.
If either of you have more time to chat afterwards, I'm happy to stay on and chat backstage. Cool. I've got a little bit more free time. But I feel like it's about time to wrap things up. So I'm going to give it back over to that guy over there.
Yeah, thank you all. This has been awesome. And that's what's so fun about these. It's like there's always more. There's more to dig up. There's more depth, and I mean, there's so many things like I got to rewatch this because there's so much that opened up, and like what Matthew was saying earlier about what he revealed, and it's like making me think other things. And yeah, this is great. I love it. Thank you both again. Thank you all at home for tuning in with us and just being a part of this conversation, this inquiry, this exploration, and this journey of discovering who we are and who we can be and what's possible. And it's like ultimately, what will the future bring? You get to say. I get to say. And it's
we consciousness. We decide.
We get to say.
Yes.
And we get to say.
And
and that's the truth. And I am just so happy and excited to have this conversation. But again, I want to invite anybody who's watching to really join us. Be on this stage. Share your gift. Share who you are. Be with us and just share your experiences that have allowed you to discover and to thrive in your full you. You're fully being you. Share that here because we're selfish. We want to receive the gift that you are, but we also want to share it with everybody. And that's what One Day is about. And that's what our vision is humanity rising in a connected world with each person's unique gifts, contributions, genius being valued and magnified through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. And that's what we're doing with your story and your gifts. And that's the space we hold. And thank you all for being with us. Until next week, have a wonderful weekend. I love you all. Be safe, be well. And like every day, one day is today. Peace, everybody.